Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a serial entrepreneur from Melbourne, Australia, Mr. David Jenyns. David, welcome to the show.
Hey Ash, pleasure to be here.
Thank you. David is the founder of SYSTEMology, a company dedicated to helping business owners worldwide scale and streamline their operations. He's also an author of a book titled Systemology. And we're going to speak both about Systemology, the company, and Systemology, the book. But before we start, David, tell me a little bit about your own journey and what was the moment that you inspired you to shift from running a digital agency to founding Systemology?
Mm. I had that moment when I found out we were pregnant with our first child,
Mhm.
where I just realized I was burning the candle at both ends. I was working incredibly long hours in the digital agency, and I thought, I don't want to be that dad who's always too busy and hasn't got enough time to hang out with the kids and be there for breakfasts and playing catch out the back. So I really, deep down, I kind of knew there was uh, this idea of systemization. I'd been involved in some other businesses where I've really seen those businesses work well. And I thought, hey, I can make this work for me. And I thought I'd give it a go.
Wonderful. And as a serial entrepreneur, what's one of the toughest challenges you have overcome? And how did it shape your business philosophy?
Yes, early on in my career, I came up with this idea inspired by another entrepreneur out of the US where he sold the Brooklyn Bridge. He took a lot of pieces of the Brooklyn Bridge. Paul Hartunian was his name. He chopped it up into little pieces because they were doing some renovations on the bridge and then he sold it off. And I read that story and I thought, wow, I'm going to do something like that. And at the time in
Hmm,
Melbourne,
hmm.
they happened to be renovating the MCG, which is the Melbourne Cricket Ground,
Yeah,
very well-known sporting stadium. And
yeah.
Australians are a little bit sporting mad. So they happened to be doing some renovations on one of the stands, the Ponsford stand. Got my hands on a lot of the discarded wood, and I was just about to head off to a conference, and I thought, oh, I'll just wait until I get back before I
Hmm.
follow in Paul Hartunian's footsteps. And while I was away, another person did exactly the same thing as
Okay.
my idea. And I
Okay.
remember just being absolutely gutted
Hmm.
with, that was my big break, and someone came and beat me to the punch. So that really shaped who I am now, and
Hmm.
I appreciate that great ideas bubble up all across the world in different
Hmm.
locations, and other business owners and entrepreneurs have great ideas, and it really is about acting quickly, getting that idea and bringing it to market.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. It's the speed to market is very important. David, let's talk of systemology now. What are the core principles or pillars of the systemology framework? And how do you help businesses to scale?
Mm. A lot of business owners don't see themselves as systems people, and therefore they don't believe that they can own a systems driven business.
Hmm.
And what I've recognized is if you're not strong in systems, then you better make sure that you're surrounded by other people that are strong in systems because we all agree that systems driven businesses are just better businesses. So, some of the core philosophies that make systemology a little bit different
Mhm.
is I'm working with a lot of business owners who don't yet have process in place.
Hmm.
So we first start off and capture what you're currently doing,
Hmm.
not what you would like to be doing. And
Yeah.
we make that repeatable.
Hmm.
That can give tremendous wins. It's not always about being the best or doing the best on a particular task.
Hmm.
The improvement on the way that you do things can come a little bit later. You can actually get huge wins just by capturing what you're already doing, making it repeatable, removing key person dependency, and so that's probably one of the key philosophies. And one other one that comes to mind, I mean, we
Hmm.
always think about the 80/20, which
Hmm.
is what are the most critical systems that deliver the bulk of the result. So the
Hmm.
critical 20% of the systems that deliver the
Absolutely.
80% of the result. And we focus there first, understanding that just because you don't systemize something doesn't mean it's going to magically stop happening. So
Correct.
there's a few things like that that make systemology a little bit unique because a lot of
Hmm.
the other process improvement methodologies, they pre-assume you have a process that you are looking to improve and then you're
Hmm.
going to optimize. Whereas I find the first thing that we got to do is just create some space for the business owner, get them out of the doing of the work.
Hmm. Absolutely. In fact, I've seen that with many, many startup founders, and I did it myself with two startups, where systems always take a back seat while you are starting up and then they suddenly hit you. But my question to you, David, is what are some of the common misconceptions founders and business owners have about systemizing their operations?
Mm. Oftentimes, in a few of the themes we've touched on, but if we go a little bit deeper, it's things like the business owner thinks that they're going to need hundreds of systems to have any big impact. Yet, if you pick them really well, it might be 10 or 15 well selected systems. If they're well systemized and they're part of the core delivery of the product or service, then it can have a really big impact. Another thing, people tend to overcomplicate what needs to be done. And
Mhm.
the reality is simple scales and complex fails. So you really want to try and keep things as simple as possible.
Mhm.
Another very common misconception is that systems remove creativity
Mhm.
and they think, ah, we're too creative to have systems and therefore my
Mhm.
team won't follow them. Yet it's a little bit counterintuitive, but you actually find that a well systemized business, what it does is it handles the things that just need to be handled, which then creates space. And creativity needs space.
Mhm.
So you really want to systemize everything around the creativity. There's just a few, but there's
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
quite a lot of
No, but
misconception.
absolutely. But when I was preparing for my conversation with you, I was also fascinated to read about your 7-step systemization process.
Yes.
Tell me about these 7 steps.
So it's define, assign, extract, organize,
Mm,
integrate, scale, and optimize. So the
mm,
book Systemology is a system to systemize a business.
mm,
Each one of those is one step in the business.
mm,
And we kind of already started just in our earlier discussion, step number one, which has a lot to do with thinking about, well, what are the first few systems you're going to document?
mm,
And there's a step for that. And then we think about whom on your team already knows how to do those tasks, and we capture what they're already doing to a great standard. Then we extract it out of their brain. So
mm,
we record them doing the task. How do we document that? And then we organize it. We put it in a central location where the whole team can tap into it. And you build up effectively like a business brain that houses the most critical information.
mhm,
And then we integrate, which is step number five. Yeah, step number five. And that's all about getting the team on board. We want to
mm,
make sure that they see that this new approach is going to help them.
mm,
And then we scale, which is we identify what are the other systems required to grow the business, things like recruiting and onboarding and management systems and finance systems. We
mm,
we start to round out that. And then towards the end, and again, something that makes systemology a bit unique is we finish with optimize. That is, we then go, well, now we've captured the way that we do what we do. How and where can we improve? And we understand that every problem in business is a systems problem.
mm.
So we start to look at our numbers and then we go, oh, we don't have enough leads. Well, let's work on our lead generation systems. Or, hey, our conversion's not working. We're not selling enough. Okay, well, let's go to work on our sales process. And that's really the way we approach it.
Very interesting. Can you also tell us a little bit about the role of technology or software tools in your systemization approach?
Mm. This has probably become more important, particularly over the last 12 to 24 months, as we start to see AI rise
Yep.
and the impact that it's having on small business.
Mm.
So we obviously want to embrace technology where it makes work easier. We always focus on making things as easy as possible for the team where it's easier to follow process than not follow process. So it helps with our documentation. We can use tools like ChatGPT where we record someone doing a task and we feed the transcript into ChatGPT and we ask it to draft
Hmm.
process for us and we get a
Mm.
great result. But then we also use it in things like our project management software to ensure that there's very clear accountability and transparency across the organization. So everybody knows who is doing what by when.
Right. Right. Well said. And how does systemology support businesses that are scaling rapidly, especially with international or remote teams?
Mm. Systemology was really born to scratch my own itch. And we have a virtual team
Mhm.
that works in many different countries around the world
Mm.
as they start to grow and scale. So, in many regards, it was designed for those types of teams,
Mm.
making sure, I think when you're working virtually, it's really important that expectations are very clear, that communication is crystal clear.
Mm.
So process is one of the only ways that you can say, well, this is my standard, this is what I expect, and this is the way that you do a particular task. So
Mm.
it's very integral.
Very interesting. And how do you specifically cater to small business owners who feel overwhelmed and unsure of where they can start?
Mm. Well, the idea of systemology is that it is a system to systemize your business. So it's a very simple approach from going from I don't really have any process in place to, well, I now have something in place and you're starting to build systems culture. So that first step is where we do our most important work and where I focused on because I thought when I came across systemology, I'm familiar with a lot of the classic business books, Scaling Up, Built to Sell, Work the System, E-Myth. They all make a great case for systemization, but
Mm.
many of them don't actually say, and how do you do it? Where do you get started? And
Mm.
that's what I thought, well, I'll write the book for the small business owner, the business owner that has between 5 and 30 staff that haven't quite got this traction. And
Mm.
how could I write a system that they could follow? So it's, yeah, it's very much tailored towards them.
Very interesting. And could you give us an example of, a medium or a small business owner who has worked with you on your processes and seen a big change? No names, of course.
Oh, look, I've got quite a few clients that are happy to share names.
Mm.
One gentleman I can think of, he lives in Adelaide, Australia, and his name is Ryan Stannard. He runs a company called Stannard Homes.
Hmm.
They are a residential builder, and he was very much on the tools, like a lot of tradespeople are, and was trying to grow the business beyond him. And he actually identified something that we call a systems champion, which is the person on your team
Right.
who helps to support the business owner, document process, build a systems culture. And it just so happened his systems champion was his daughter, Erin. And she joined the business as an interior designer, but then really started to evolve and went through the entire organization, meeting with some of the key team members. They got about 15 team members at the time and would meet with them and find out the ways that the team members were doing things. And she would help to capture and document and organize and
Mm.
really started to systemize the business to a point where um, about 2 summers ago, Ryan took 7 weeks off
Hmm.
over summer and traveled around Australia in a caravan while his daughter helped to oversee the operations and everything ran really smoothly, which for a lot of business owners, especially in the trades-based business, it's very rare for them to be able to get off tools and
Yeah.
the business continue to grow.
Mm. That's a very big achievement for a medium-sized business to actually leave your business to somebody else and see the business grow in your absence.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for such a great example. My next question, David, is can systemology be integrated with existing businesses that have partial systems in place, or do businesses have to start from scratch?
Mm. Generally, systemology has a lot to do with the philosophies that we talked about, and oftentimes some of the earliest work in systemology is about focusing in on where is the pain within the
Hmm.
organization and helping to systemize and document those areas. So it really can pick up where other methodologies have left off. Sometimes businesses have tried to systemize and things haven't quite worked, or maybe their business is a bit clunky and they have partially documented systems. Some departments are more well systemized than other departments. And systemology gives just a framework, a way of thinking
Hmm.
that can help to fill in those gaps,
Hmm.
start to build culture, and start to change the organization from within.
Hmm. So basically, what you're saying is it's a process that people follow within their existing system, so to speak, and just make it better and more efficient.
Yeah, very much so. Because we first capture what you're currently doing, and then we start to fill in some of the gaps. And if you've
Hmm.
already got certain things documented, it just means that you can move a little bit quicker, and then
Hmm.
you can get to the optimization
Yeah.
stage a little bit quicker.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you see any challenges with team members on how much of a buy-in you need? Because the problem with any transformation is that as human beings, we all love status quo or status quo
Yeah.
ante. The boss wants to change if the team doesn't.
Yes,
I'm sure
very
you faced
common.
this many times.
Yes.
How do you
And
tackle some of these?
you're right, the larger the organization gets, also, the harder it becomes to change the
Correct.
culture. So the way that we do it, and I hinted at it earlier. The first step is to actually identify that systems champion. There's a great video, I think it's called The Dancing Man, and by Derek Sivers, he's talking over the top of it and doing some commentary. But it's about a man who's dancing on the side of a hill, and then someone comes and joins him, and then another person does, and another person does, and
Yeah.
before you know it, it's at a dance festival and half the side of a mountain, everybody's dancing. And a lot of business schools analyze this about how to start a movement. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of similarities with starting a movement inside an organization. The
Mm.
business owner is the first crazy lone dancer that's dancing alone.
Yeah.
The systems champion is the first supporter, and they're the person that turns that crazy person into a leader.
Mm.
And then you'll get your early adopters. And the key is you find people that connect with this new approach and want to follow it and want to join in, and you really celebrate their successes and show
Mm.
the team, hey, this is how we do things here. And
Mm.
there will always be resistors. And I think the great thing is there's never been a better time to systemize, and there's so much change going on in everybody's life
Mm.
that I think people are becoming a bit more familiar, especially post-COVID,
Yeah.
on how much life can just change. So
Right.
we need to build the case as to why systems are important and help team members understand how it benefits them.
Great response. One more question relating to systemology, and then we've got a few questions about your book. How do you maintain flexibility and adaptability within a systemized approach, especially when market conditions are uncertain?
Mm. It's quite common for the misconception to be that systems-driven businesses are slower moving and less able to adapt. And I
Mm.
feel perhaps larger organizations where they have a lot of process, but I don't know if that's the process or more reflective of the size of the organization.
Mm.
Because processes are not about, at least in my opinion, having robots who just follow process and don't think. We want to empower great team members to be more efficient and quickly discover new ways of doing things, and we want to build a culture of improvement and adapting, and we're always looking to delegate down through systemization. We capture process and pass tasks down to less skilled, typically more junior team members to complete, to free up the highest value team members who can problem solve the most challenging work. And we actually want to give them space to think of these changing market conditions and what needs to happen to adapt, and how does AI impact me here, or this new particular technology. So by having a business that's systems driven and certain things are happening, much like creativity, adaptability requires space,
Mm.
and process ensures that things in the business can just happen, which then frees people up to be able to make adjustments where needed.
Mm. Well said. Let's now talk about your book, Systemology. And my first question is, given all the work that you're doing in your company, Systemology, what was the need that you felt uh, to write the book and put all your thoughts down? Um,
Yeah.
what was the motivation, or what was a gap you were aiming to fill?
When I took some time out, so after the birth of our first child, I took about a year off and realized I'd fallen out of love with the digital agency work. And then I thought, what do I really want to do? And I had had the experience of just recently systemizing that business. And I put a CEO in when I stepped off and took my year off.
Hmm.
And I'd been involved in previous businesses where we had also systemized also. So there's always been this undercurrent of systems. And then I realized, hang on, I feel like there's a lot of work that's written to this idea of systems are important, but there's not much work on, and how do we do it, and where do we start, and how does it work for small business? There's a lot maybe at the other end of town, especially with a lot of the lean and Six Sigma and work that focuses in on manufacturing, but smaller scale, not so much. So I was
Right.
really drawn to the idea. I had the good fortune, I talk about it in the Systemology book, to do some work with Michael E. Gerber. And that was also a big part. He was well, many say he's kind of like the godfather of business systems. He wrote a book called The E-Myth, and that uh, opportunity to work with him made me go, you know what? I'm going to follow this idea.
Very interesting. So, time for one more question. And this is that for someone who reads your book and wants to immediately implement the insights that you have given there, what's the first actionable step they should take, other than, of course, signing up with David Jenyns?
Yeah. Look, the first step in the system, define.
Hmm.
And we have an exercise in there called the critical client flow. And what it does is it just maps the linear journey that a prospect and a client goes through to deliver the core product or service. That one exercise takes about 5, 10 minutes, but it can be incredibly revealing to learn where the gaps are and what you should systemize first. Because then you can start to ask the question, looking at the critical client flow, where is the pain? What goes wrong? Oftentimes, business owners don't even realize sometimes that they subconsciously sabotage their business because, in the back of their head, they go, oh, if I sell another client, that's going to equal pain for me. I'm already busy. I don't have enough space.
Yeah.
And if I take this client on board, it's going to be even more work. And then they sabotage. And what we want to do is we want to uncover those areas where
Hmm.
that's stopping a business owner going out and being bold and marketing strong and making sure that they sell really, really well, which then helps to open up the capacity of the business. So that first step would be the first step in systemology, and that would be the exercise, the critical client flow.
Hmm. Wow. And on that note, David, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. I just loved your story about the Brooklyn Bridge and how that was almost a catalyst for you to start systemology. I think we covered some fascinating ground on different aspects of systemology and how critical it is for businesses to really get their systems in place, especially, I would say, for small businesses and startup founders. Thank you also for speaking to me about your book, which is also systemology. Thank you again and good luck to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ash.
Thank you for listening to the brand called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.